Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. So if you caught my last video, you'll know that I've been traveling for work pretty much all month. So it's finally good to be back home and get a new video out for everyone. So massive shout out to Bellum-Games. They had sent me out a copy of the Dai Yokai kit for Conquest, and I'm just now getting able to have the time to get everything painted and make a video. So that's what we're going to be doing today. But today's video isn't going to be a standard sort of like paint step-by-step tutorial that I normally do. What we're going to do today is really kind of focus in on the process of painting a huge miniature like this, because this thing is freaking massive. So, like, if I put this next to my head, it's actually larger than my head. And if you can't tell, I actually have a gigantic head. I have to wear a 3X motorcycle helmet. So, a lot of people, especially if you're coming from, like Warhammer or War Machine, or maybe some tabletop skirmish games, you don't really have experience painting something as large as some of the monsters that feature so heavily in Conquest. So we're going to give you some tips on how you can get these painted up looking great, but keeping it simple and keeping that stress level down, as learning something new can be stressful. Now, before we dive in, if you're not subscribed, you've been watching the videos on the channel and you like what I do here, do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell. That way you'll know whenever I release new content. And then if you're new to Conquest, if you like the Dai Yokai and the other Yoroni miniatures that I've been showing off, or maybe you like one of the other factions and you're thinking about diving in, you can use my affiliate code that I have with ParaBellum. Just type in JTS Wargaming at checkout on their web store. You'll save yourself a little bit of money off of your purchase, 10% to be exact. And then we get a little bit of a kickback on all of those sales, which helps go to, keeping the lights on and helping me, put these videos out. So that's really appreciated. If you're going to be buying Conquest anyway, it's no additional cost to you. Just go ahead and use that code on your first purchase. Step one, before you even pick out your paints and you pick up a paintbrush, is actually make a plan for what you want to do. So with the Yoroni, especially this Dai Yokai, who's kind of decked out in this stylized samurai armor, I went ahead and did a little Google research, and I wanted to find out about the color symbolism that was in place throughout Japanese history as it related to the various parts of their war gear. So I actually found some really interesting things that really stuck out to me. So blue armor is associated with the word kachi, which is Japanese for victory, and Yoroni be winning, so that sounded perfect. The color red is associated with vitality, the sun, obviously fire, but also expelling demons. Now, this was interesting because red is also associated with Oni, or demons in Japan, and the Yoroni being literal demons who, when they're in their sort of limbo dimension, the hell, they're actually fighting each other while they're trying to attain transcendence and then breach into the mortal realm. So having red kind of also meaning expelling demons, so that could symbolize that this Dai Yokai was actually really, really good at fighting his way through the underworld in order to attain enlightenment and make that breach. We've also got purple, which symbolizes nobility and strength and courage, and then green, which, funnily enough, represents wood, but also again represents vitality as it relates to the natural world. So all of those things really kind of jumped out at me, but I didn't just go for symbolism. I also used a lot of color theory. So I'm going to go ahead and put a picture of a color wheel somewhere on screen. And with those colors that I had selected out, we want to take a look at their relationships and how we go about maximizing harmony as well as contrast. So for our contrasting elements, purple complements brass, which is kind of a yellow brown. We've also got green, which complements red. So another great contrast pairing there. Blue and red are contrasting. They're not perfect complements of each other. Red is one step away from blue's perfect complement, which is orange. So they still contrast, but it's not a perfect complement. But the really neat thing is that to create some harmony, when you mix blue and red, you get purple, which is directly in between both of them, and it's going to make the perfect shadow color for both of those colors. Also, on the contrasting side, since purple complements brass, we'll be able to use purple washes on a lot of our brass metallics, and that's really going to help those highlights to pop thanks to that complementary effect. Now, green is a little of the odd man out here. It does complement red, but I'm opting for desaturated drab greens here because a lot of my greens are going to be in shadowed areas, and that will help minimize its clashing effect on purple. Now, as a reminder, we're about to throw some footage on screen while I'm kind of talking through the process. This is not a video where I'm going to go step by step and show you how exactly I'm applying every single color. We're really focused on that process. But in case you are interested in the colors that I chose, I'm going to go ahead and throw up a paint list on screen right now. You can go ahead and pause the video and take a look if there's anything that happens to catch your eye. So step one of almost any painting project, once it's actually time to put paint onto the model, is blocking in all of your colors. So now with something big like this, where you have to worry about making mistakes and getting your brush into all of the nooks and crannies, you really want to work from the inside out. So that means applying colors to the underside and parts of the model that might be obscured by outer layers. You want to paint those things first. Also, when you're working with something huge like this, you really want to use the biggest brush that you can get away with for whatever step you're doing and still retain your fine control. So for a lot of this process, I'm using a size 6 brush, and I'll try and get that closer to the screen so that you guys can see how big that is. This is going to hold way more moisture, way more paint, so you'll be able to cover more surface area at once before you need to reload your brush. Right, so here in the on-screen footage, I'm laying down really my darkest shadow colors first for this blocking phase. So that's colors like Payne's Gray, which is a really dark blue for all of the blue armor panels, and then Brown Gray for anything that's going to be brass or cloth. This is going to make a better base for those colors to go over rather than having them go over our straight black primer. Now that we've got that out of the way, one great way to make your large miniature stand out without the painting process taking forever is to pick one specific detail of the miniature that's really prominent and then put more effort into that versus so instead of painting every single piece of it to your highest ability or pushing yourself on every single piece, unless of course you're painting for a competition. In that case, do you, boo. But if this is just going to be a gameplay piece, just having that one standout item can really, really make the miniature look good while hiding a lot of your simpler work. So for me, I chose it's going to be the armor panels, the blue armor panels. There are a lot of them. It covers most of the upper body as well as the midsection. So it really makes sense for that to be where I want the viewer's eye to be drawn. So, with that being said, every single armor panel gets layered up with 4 additional blues on top of the Payne's gray. And then we're going to end with white blue edge highlights. Again, every single piece. And then we're going to glaze over everything with a mix of transparent blue and transparent black. That's going to blend all of our layering and kind of smooth it out. And that's going to give us this really, really crisp, dark blue armor that fades gradually to a really, really bright edge highlight. It simply looks fantastic. But in getting that out of the way, I can now paint the rest of the miniature in a more simple style and kind of keep my own stress level relatively low. All right, and pretty much for most of the rest of the miniature, we're going to follow the K.I.S.S method. Keep it simple, stupid. So just basic layering, the same thing that you've seen, for dozens of years in painting tutorials from creators the world over. So we're going to keep it to a max of 3 colors per area. So for instance, with the red ropes, they're just going to get a shadow, a midtone, a highlight, and then a wash. Now, one thing that I will caution, so a lot of people who get started in this hobby, they learn how to paint using the Games Workshop method. Warhammer 40K is the giant, elephant in the room. They're, one of the most popular paint brands as well as one of the most popular games. So they bring people in, they teach people to paint a certain way, which is they will tell you to base, apply your shade, your wash, and then rebase, and then midtone, and then highlight. So you end up with an extra step because you really could just base, midtone, make a really, really punchy highlight, and then wash over top, and then leave it alone. And the wash, which does have that darkening effect still, because you kind of adjusted your values high in the beginning, when it darkens it, it brings it back down to where you want it. Now, that does take practice. You really need to know your paints, but I highly recommend that you learn to paint in that fashion if you're going to be layering, because over time it will save you time, which means you can paint more of your gray minis that are languishing in your pile of shame. All right, so next up is the most important step in the process. Work sent me to Las Vegas for a conference, and I couldn't paint for a week. I also got sick, which I don't know if you can hear in my voice. I'm still recovering. So what that actually helped me do, I don't expect work to send everyone away from your painting projects, but it did give me a stopping point where I could stop, kind of think about everything that I had done so far and how I wanted to progress through the end of painting this project. I highly encourage everyone, when you're in the middle of a painting project, just kind of stop, reassess, make sure that you're executing your original plan well, or maybe your original plan wasn't that great and now you're looking at the miniature and you're like, okay, I need to pivot. It's usually easier to fix the trajectory of where your paint job's going in the middle of it than it is when you get all the way done and everything's already painted and now you're like, oh, I want to make corrections and stuff. Luckily, things weren't going poorly for me. However, there were a couple of issues that did need to be addressed. So one is the massive bone crest on the top of the helmet for the Dai Yokai. Now, typically when I paint bone, it's a very simple, sort of a tan, base coat, throw some skeleton horde contrast paint over top. Maybe I'll dry brush it if I'm feeling fancy. And that's really great for a small, little 28 millimeter skeleton. But for something this large, it was going to look out of place. It wasn't going to look good. So I was really looking for something that would give me a really good, realistic, aged, almost kind of bleached, sun bleached look. And for that, Monument Hobbies actually came to the rescue. So if you're interested in Pro Acrylic paints, which is the majority of what I used in this video, on the Monument Hobbies YouTube channel, they have tons of short videos, which are just color recipes with a really short video showing you how to achieve different effects. And one of them happens to be for an aged bone. And I went ahead, I copied that process. The only addition was at the tail end. I went ahead and dry brushed my highlight tone over the wash. For them, they just leave it at the wash step. But it looks great. I am totally pleased with how that turned out. So remember what I said about plans falling apart? Well, that happened here. So when I got to the skin, originally, kind of like the box art, I wanted a magenta, kind of purpley demon skin, which is very common throughout the Yoroni faction. Well, the problem is I've already got a lot of purple and red on the miniature, especially for the feet, the shin armor directly above it, so the two areas are right next to each other. I painted those purple, which means having, purple skin as well, you wouldn't get contrast between the two items. So I had to pivot for a more human hand flesh instead. Thankfully, Pro Acryl has a lot of flesh colors, so I was able to kind of pick a shadow midtone highlight that worked, that I think pretty well, gave me good contrast away from the purple that was butting up right next to it, and I think it turned out pretty well. So after finishing up the final details like the armor lacing, which I will say that was a mind-bending process when you're sick and probably a little under the influence of your cold medication. But after I made it through all of that, I went ahead and hit the bottle with a coat of Rust-Oleum matte clear. Now that is an enamel spray varnish in a rattle can, and because it's an enamel product, it's a little bit more hard wearing than a typical acrylic varnish. Now, even though it's matte, it's not ultra matte like a lot of our hobby matte varnishes, so there is still a little bit of a sheen to the miniature, but I thought that that was appropriate since a lot of samurai armor was actually lacquered. And with the extra protection that the enamel varnish will give, that will help, protect the paint job, because I really don't know how I'm going to transport something this large to the game store. But anyway, here goes some finished photography of the final miniature with all the basing done and everything. I had a really fun time going through this whole painting process, and I hope that this video will help, kind of take away some of that apprehension and anxiety that may come from painting a large miniature like this for the first time. You can break things apart into smaller chunks, maybe pick out, one or two things that you want to really, really push yourself on. But then really the rest of the miniature is just the basic layering that we all know and love, that we use to get all of our miniatures painted just on a larger scale. So real quick, since I've been away for a while, I do want to talk about some things that I have in the pipeline that'll be coming up soon that you all can look forward to. So, first up, with Conquest, since this is a Conquest themed video, ParaBellum has sent me out the Mahatsu character kit, so that will be the next Conquest mini that we will be painting here on the channel. And I've got a really, really fun idea for that one, so make sure you stay tuned and look out for that. We've also got Epic Warpath, so part of my pledge managed to get here from the UK before the de minimis tariff fiasco took effect. Got 2 factions worth of minis in my hands, as well as the rulebook. So we will be taking a look at this in the near future. And then lastly, I've been talking to the creator of a really, really special indie game called Magical Girl Assault. So I'll be doing a little bit of coverage here on the channel. Even though it's an indie game, they're starting to do the convention road circuit. They're just now, I believe, at ReaperCon, if that's still going on. I've been sick the past week. I believe ReaperCon was this week that I'm filming, but it's published by a small games publisher and studio down in Texas. So with all of the tariff madness that's going on, I kind of wanted to see if there were American, game creators that were putting out really, really cool products that really interested me. And Magical Girl Assault, for me, kind of feels like if you mixed, anime, which I'm a big fan of, with a little bit of War Machine. So it's a very interesting system, and we'll be taking a look at that in the very near future. Now, again, thank you so much if you made it, to the end of the video. Shout out to my channel member. Also, if you made it this far, you obviously like what I do. You might as well hit the subscribe and notification bell. Make sure you throw a like on the video. That will help push my videos out to the masses. So hopefully more people will see them, and we can keep cranking out the content. That's really all I've got for this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.